The Christmas tree lights were still blinking when my father's palm hit the table. The sound cut through Bing Crosby's crooning like a gunshot. You get out. This family has no room for a daughter like you. My mother shrank deeper into the corner of the sofa, her hand pressed over her mouth, mascara bleeding into the lines around her eyes. My brother leaned against the doorframe, cigarette dangling from his lips, smoke curling up Tawa RD, the plastic mistletoe nobody had kissed under free RS. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his phone, thumb scrolling like the scene unfolding in front of him was just background noise. Fine, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. I'm going. You think you can just walk out? My father was on his feet now, face red above his plaid Christmas sweater. His knee brace creaked when he shifted weight. You think the world owes you something because you went to college and bought yourself a little appartement? I think the world owes me nothing. I grabbed my coat off the back of the dining chair. But I also don't owe you my appartement. Or my savings. Or my life. Your nephew needs that school district. My father's voice rose. Your brother's family is struggling. You're single, you have no children, what do you need a 2-bedroom in the city for? For living in. I pulled my keys from my pocket. That's what people do with appartements. They live in them. My mother made a sound somewhere between a sob and a cough. Linda, please, it's Christmas Eve, let's just sit down and talk about this like a family, we've been talking for 3 months. I looked at her. Every Sunday dinner. Every holiday. Every time I come over, it's the same conversation. You need me to sign over the deed. You need me to help with your brother's down payment. You need me to put my nephew through private school. When does anybody ask what I need? My father slammed his hand on the table again. The ceramic nativity scene wobbled and Mary toppled over, her painted face cracking against the wood. Nobody moved to pick her up. Your mother is crying, my father said. Look at what you're doing to your mother. I looked. She was crying. She always cried. Crying was her job, her only weapon, the only thing she knew how to do when the room got too loud. I remembered being 6 years old and standing in the same living room while my father yelled about something I'd broken, and my mother cried then too. She cried when my brother got caught shoplifting, cried when my father lost money on that bad investment, cried when I told them I was moving 3 hours away for college. Crying never fixed anything. But it made everyone stop fighting long enough to pay attention to her. I'm not the one who made her cry. I zipped my coat. I'm just the one leaving. My brother finally looked up from his phone. Dad, let her go. She'll be back in a week. She always comes back. He said it like he was talking about a stray cat. Like I had no other place to go. Like the apartment I'd saved for 5 years didn't count as a home because I lived there alone. Not this time. I walked to the door. My boots crunched over fallen tinsel on the carpet. The tree stood crooked in the corner, a STR tilted on top, lights flickering on and off like a dying heartbeat. Linda. My mother's voice cracked. Your father's knee surgery is next month. We need help. The insurance doesn't cover all of it. The hospital called yesterday. I paid for the MRI. I turned at the door. I paid for the consultation. I paid for the physical therapy appointments. That was $5,000 Rs. Do you remember that? Do you remember thanking me for that? My father's jaw tightened. It's what family does. Family does a lot of things. I pulled the door open. Cold air rushed in, rang the smell of wet snow and pine needles. Family also tells you when you're being taken advantage of. I'm telling you now. I'm done. I walked out. The door closed behind me and I heard something shatter inside, a plate, or maybe the glass dish my mother had put the roasted carrots in. I didn't stop to check. The snow had sta root falling again, big lazy flakes that caught in my hair and melted on my cheeks. The driveway was slick with ice under fresh powder. I walked carefully to my car, a 10-year-old sedan with a cracked taillight and a heater that blew lukewarm no matter how high I turned it. I'd bought it used 5 years ago with money from my first real job. My father had called it a girl's car. I'd called it mine. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine running, watching my breath fog the windshield. The house behind me glowed warm through the windows. I could see my mother's silhouette moving past the curtains, stooping to pick up whatever had broken. My father stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed. My brother was back on his phone, already checked out. I pulled out of the driveway. The tires skidded for a second before catching traction. I didn't look back. On the main road, I pulled over at the gas station and called my best friend Susan. She answered on the first ring. Are you okay? You sound weird. I left. I gripped the steering wheel, watching the gas station attendant scrape ice off the front window. Dad kicked me out. Well, I walked out. Same difference. What happened this time? The APA meant things, same script. Different day. I leaned my head back against the headrest. My nephew needs a good school district. My brother can't afford it. So I should just give away the thing I worked my entire adult life to buy. Because family. Did you laugh in their faces? Please tell me you laughed. I didn't laugh. I just left. My voice cracked. Susan, my mother cried. And I stood there and watched her cry and I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt tired. That's not your fault. That's called being done with being manipulated. She paused. Where are you now? You're not going back to your APA meant, or they'll show up tomorrow with another sad story. I'm parked at the mobile station on Maple. I don't know where I'm going. Come to my place. I've got leftover lasagna and a bottle of wine that's been waiting for an emergency. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and sat for a moment longer, watching the snow pile on the hood of my car. The street was empty. The gas station lights buzzed overhead. I pulled my phone out again and called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, voice shaky. Linda, honey, where are you? Your father didn't mean it, he's just stressed about the surgery, Mom. I kept my voice low. I need you to hear me. I'm not coming back tomorrow. I'm not coming back next week. I'm not signing anything. And I need you to stop pretending this is about the surgery. I'm not pretending, it really is. Then why did you bring up the APA meant 3 times tonight? Why did you mention the school district? Why did you talk about your brother needing help with the down payment? She was quiet. I could hear my father's voice in the background, sharp and angry, and my brother saying something back in that lazy drawl. Mom. Are you still there? Your brother has a family, she said finally. He has responsibilities. You're young. You have time. You can build again. Build what again? My life, my savings, my credit score. I'm 31, Mom. I spent 5 years building that APA meant. 5 years of 2 jobs and no vacations and eating ramen noodles so I could make the mortgage. And you want me to just hand it over because he got married and had a baby? He's your brother, he's never done anything for me. I heard my own voice rise and forced it back down. He didn't help me move into my dorm. He didn't help me with my student loans. He didn't offer to pay for Dad's MRI. He didn't even show up when I had my appendix out, remember that? I was in the hospital for 3 days and he didn't visit once. He was busy with work, Mom. I closed my eyes. I love you. I do. But I can't do this anymore. I can't come back to a house where everything I have is seen as something that should be handed over to someone else. She sta root crying again. I could hear her trying to muffle it. What am I supposed to tell your father? Tell him I'll come visit when he's ready to treat me like a daughter instead of a bank account. I paused. I'm going to Susan's. I'll call you in a few days. I hung up before she could answer. My hands were shaking. I turned the heat up and pulled onto the road. Susan lived across town in a duplex with yellow shutters and a porch swing that never swung because the chains were rusted. I parked in her driveway and sat for a minute, letting the warmth of the car sink into my frozen fingers. The porch light flipped on. Susan opened the front door in her bathrobe, holding a bottle of wine in one hand and 2 glasses in the other. Get in here, she called. You look like a snowman. I walked up the path. The snow crunched under my boots. Inside, her living room was lit with strings of white fairy lights and a fire crackling in the gas fireplace. The lasagna sat on the coffee table, still steaming. Talk, she said, handing me a glass. I told her everything. The dinner table, the appartement, the crying, the shattered nativity scene. She listened without interrupting, refilling my glass when I paused. When I finished, she leaned back on the couch. Your mother, she said slowly, has been brainwashed for so long she doesn't know which way is up anymore. That's not helpful. It's true. Your brother has been the golden child his whole life. Anything he needs, they bend over backward to provide. Anything you need, you're expected to provide it yourself. And now they want you to provide for him too. I nodded. They don't even see it. That's the worst part. They really think I'm being selfish. You're being sane. She reached over and squeezed my arm. And sane people don't sign over their homes to their nephew's school district. I know. I put my glass down and looked at the fire. I just wish it didn't hurt this much. Susan didn't try to make it better. She knew me well enough to know I didn't want someone to fix it. I just wanted someone to sit with it. We ate lasagna in silence, the fire popping, the snow still falling outside. Around midnight my phone buzzed. My brother. Dad says you're not coming home. Fine. But we need to talk about the appartement. This isn't going away. I typed back, it's not your appartement to talk about. He answered immediately, it's family property. You know that. I locked my phone and put it face down on the table. Susan didn't ask. She didn't have to. I stayed on her couch that night, wrapped in an old quilt, ring at the fairy lights. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. I'd been here 100 times over the years, after bad dates, after work drama, after the holidays that left me hollow and drained. But this time felt different. This time I'd walked out on my own terms. I hadn't been pushed. I hadn't been tricked. I'd looked at my father across that table and I'd said no. And the world hadn't ended. My mother had cried, but she cried about everything. My father had yelled, but he yelled about everything. They would wake up tomorrow and the sun would still rise and I would still be here, in Susan's living room, with my car keys in my pocket and a phone full of messages I didn't have to answer. I thought about the apartment. The 2-bedroom in the brick building on Elm Street. The hardwood floors I'd refinished myself, the kitchen cabinets I'd painted sage green, the balcony where I grew basil in clay pots. I'd spent 5 years making that place mine. It was small and sometimes the pipes banged at night and the upstairs neighbor played jazz too loud on Sundays. But it was mine. And I would keep it that way. I would call the lawyer on Monday. I would make sure the deed was clear. I would stop going to Sunday dinners. I would stop answering my brother's messages. I would stop trying to earn a place in a family that had never had a place for me. I fell asleep thinking about that. And for the first time in months, I didn't dream about the Christmas tree lights or the shattered nativity scene or my mother's wet face. I dreamed about the balcony. The basil. The Sunday morning light that came through the kitchen window. In the morning, I woke to Susan already in the kitchen making coffee. My phone had died sometime during the night. I plugged it in and watched the screen light up. 4 missed calls. 3 from my mother. 1 from my brother. 3 messages. All from my brother. Dad fell. He was out shoveling the walk. Slipped and hit the back of his head. He's at the hospital now. They're doing tests. Might be a concussion. Mom is freaking out. You need to come. I mean it. I read them 3 times, standing in Susan's kitchen in yesterday's clothes. The fire was out. The coffee was hot. The snow had stopped falling outside. Susan looked at my face and set down her mug. What happened? I held up the phone. Dad fell. My brother wants me to come. Are you going? I looked at the window. The street was white and clean, untouched by tire tracks. The sun was coming up over the rooftops, pale and thin. I don't know, I said. And I meant it. I didn't decide to go back until I'd finished my coffee and washed the mug and stood at Susan's kitchen window watching the sun climb over the telephone wires. My phone buzzed again. My mother this time, her voice cracking through the speaker. Linda, your father is in the emergency room. They're doing a CAT scan. The doctors say he hit his head road. Your brother is here but he can't stay because he has a meeting this afternoon. I'm all alone. I looked at the snow melting off the rooftops. I'll come. Susan raised an eyebrow from the sofa but didn't say anything. She knew better. The hospital was 20 minutes away. I drove slow, the road still slick in patches, watching the plows push dirty snow into mountains at the intersections. The parking lot was half empty, Christmas morning keeping most people at home with their presents and their turkey and their families who didn't fight about real estate. I found a spot near the ER entrance and sat in the CAR for a moment. This was the same hospital where I'd been born. Same wing, same yellow brick, same automatic doors that opened too slow. I'd come here twice last year with my mother for her checkups. She'd held my arm and told the nurses I was her daughter. The nurses had smiled. Nobody asked about my brother. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. My mother sat in the corner, bundled in her winter coat, clutching a paper cup that had gone cold. She looked up when I walked in and her face crumpled like paper. Linda. You came. Where's Dad? Back in the treatment array. They're watching him overnight. The doctor said he has a mild concussion and a cut on his head that needed stitches, but it could have been worse. She set the cup down and stood up, pulling me into a hug. Her coat was damp. I was so red. Your brother drove him here but he had to leave for work. He said he'd come back tonight but he had a meeting, I finished. I know. He rode. My mother pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes were red, her makeup long gone. Thank you for coming. Your father won't say it, but he asked about you. I doubt that. He did. She nodded. When they put the stitches in, he asked the nurse if his daughter had come yet. He meant your brother, of course, but still. He asked. I didn't know what to do with that information. I filed it away in a corner of my mind and looked past her through the double doors. Can I see him? Only 2 visitors at a time, and he's with the doctor right now. They said 15 minutes. She sat back down heavily. You want some coffee? The machine in the hall makes terrible coffee, but it's WRM. I'll get it. I walked to the vending machine, fed it $1 bill, and watched the paper cup drop with a dull thunk. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. The way my father drank it. I didn't know why I did that. I brought it back to my mother and sat next to her. The waiting room chairs were hot RD plastic, bolted to the floor in rows. A television mounted on the wall played a weather report with the sound off. Snow tomorrow. Cold temperatures. More snow after that. I know we didn't end well last night, my mother said quietly. But I need to tell you something. And I need you to listen without getting angry. I'll try. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Note paper, the kind she used for grocery lists, torn along one edge. She unfolded it and handed it to me. It was a receipt. Hospital bill. My father's name. The date from last month. Amount due, $18,000 RS for the knee surgery he hadn't scheduled yet. But underneath that, circled in blue ink, a smaller line, consultation and MRI paid in full. My name was written next to it in the same blue ink. You paid the consultation, she said. We never thanked you properly. Your father tried to tell me he could have handled it, but he couldn't. He barely has enough in his account for the property taxes. Mom, I know. That's not why I paid for it. I paid for it because it needed to get done. Your brother didn't offer to help with the bill. She said it flatly, without accusation. He said he would, but he had the down payment on the new house and the roof needed repairs on his current place and the car needed new tires. There was always something. He gave us $300 RS. $300. For a procedure that cost your father more than a week's paycheck. I folded the receipt and handed it back. What are you telling me this for? She looked at me and for a moment she wasn't the crying woman from the living room. She was someone else. Someone tired, yes, but someone who had made a decision. I'm telling you because I don't want you to think I don't see what's happening. I see it. I've always seen it. The double doors swung open. A nurse walked out, a clipboard RD in her hand, and called my mother's name. We both stood up. Mr. Chin is awake. He's asking for family. 2 visitors at a time, please. My mother hesitated. Linda, come with me. Are you sure? Come with me. We walked through the doors together. The hallway was bright and sterile, the floors polished to a mirror shine. Room 312. My father lay in a bed with his head wrapped in white gauze, a thin line of dried blood visible along his hairline. His eyes were open but heavy-lidded, and when he saw me, he blinked like he was trying to focus on something he didn't quite believe. You're here, he said. His voice was different. Lower, slower, the sharpness gone. Mom called. She was worried. Humph. He looked at my mother. See, I told you. She'd come. You didn't tell me anything, my mother said, but she was almost smiling. You were unconscious. I was not unconscious. I was resting my eyes. He shifted in the bed and winced. They said I'll be here overnight. Observation. To make sure my brain doesn't leak out or something. That's not what they said, my mother corrected gently. They said you have a concussion and a cut. You'll be fine. Fine. He repeated the word like it was a foreign concept. Then he looked at me again. You drove all the way over here. On Christmas morning. I was at Susan's. She lives 10 minutes away. Susan. The one with the loud laugh. That's her. He nodded slowly, like he was weighing something. The machines beeped in the quiet. My mother stood by the window, watching the snow start to fall again. The room smelled like antiseptic and old bandages and something else, something metallic. Your brother called, my father said. Said he'd be back tonight. Said he'd bring dinner. He has a meeting, I said. Meeting. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. He has a meeting. Your brother always has a meeting. When you were in the hospital with that appendix thing, he had a meeting then too. Couldn't come see you. He was working. He was watching football. My father read at the ceiling. I know because I called his house and your sister-in-law told me. She said he was out back with his friends and the game was on. That's what he told your mother, though. A meeting. My mother's back stiffened, but she didn't turn around. The snow was falling harder now, swirling past the window in thick white gusts. He was 32, my father continued. Old enough to drive to a hospital. Old enough to see his sister after surgery. But he had the game on. I didn't know what to say. I'd never heard my father say anything critical of my brother. Not once. Not in 31 years. It's fine, I said finally. It was a long time ago. It's not fine. He turned his head to look at me. The movement seemed to cost him effort. It's not fine, and I never said anything because your mother told me to leave it alone. She said family doesn't keep score. But I'm old and I'm tired and I'm lying in a hospital bed on Christmas with stitches in my head, and I'm telling you. It wasn't fine. The room was quiet for a long moment. My mother turned from the window, her face pale. Howie Road, the doctor said you need to rest. I'm not resting. I'm talking. He looked at me with something I couldn't read. That appartement of yours. The one on Elm Street. You bought it yourself, no help from anyone, no help. With what money? My job. Savings. I worked weekends for 3 years. That's how you do it. He closed his eyes. That's how you build something. You don't take it from someone else. You build it yourself. I didn't know if he was talking about me or my brother or some combination of both. My mother came to the bedside and adjusted his pillow, smoothing the wrinkles with practiced hands. Your father is tired, she said. He didn't mean to bring up all that old stuff. I meant every word, my father said, eyes still closed. I'm tired of pretending. A nurse came in to check the floor. We stepped back to give her room. My mother pulled me aside into the corner near the window. Last night, before you left, she whispered, your father didn't say everything he wanted to say. After you walked out, he stood in the kitchen for an hour. Just stood there. Then he went upstairs and went to bed without dinner. Mom, your brother called him this morning. Before the fall. I heard part of the conversation. He was asking about the appartement again. Pressuring your father to talk to you. Your father got off the phone and went outside to shovel the walk. He doesn't shovel snow. He knows he can't do that with his knee. But he went out there anyway. The nurse finished and left. The door swung shut with a soft click. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying that maybe your father doesn't have the words to tell you what he thinks. But he went outside and shoveled snow in the cold because he was upset about the phone call with your brother. She held my arm and then he fell and hit his head, and now he's here and he's saying things he's never said before. I think the fall knocked something loose. Not in his brain. In his heart. I looked at my father on the bed. His chest rose and fell. The machines beeped in time. His face, slack with exhaustion, looked older than it had the night before. The lines around his mouth seemed deeper. Linda. He opened his eyes. You still here? I'm still here. Good. He shifted again, settling deeper into the pillows. Your mother's making me stay overnight. She says I need to be watched. But tomorrow I'm going home. And when I get home, we need to talk. All of us. Not about the reprinting. About the other thing. What other thing? He didn't answer. His eyes had drifted closed again. My mother motioned for us to go back to the waiting room. I followed her out, the door clicking shut behind us. In the waiting room, we sat in the same plastic chairs. The television still played the weather forecast. A family with a small child sat on the other side, the girl clutching a stuffed rabbit and sniffling into her mother's shoulder. My mother took my hand. Your father's brother, your Uncle Arthur, he passed away last year. You remember. I remember. I was at the funeral. Before he died, Arthur called your father. They hadn't spoken in yet. Arthur had a business. A dry cleaning shop in the next town over. He sold it before he got sick, and he told your father he regretted not giving more to his children when he had the chance. He said he didn't want to take his money with him. He wanted it to mean something. My mother paused. The child with the rabbit sneezed. The mother shushed her softly. Your father came home from that phone call and didn't speak for 2 days. Then he took out all the old family photos. Your wedding, your brother's wedding, the two of you as babies. He looked at them for hours. And he said, I need to do something different. Different like what? I asked. I don't know. He never told me. But he root asking about the reprinting. Not in a way that meant taking it for your brother. In a way that meant he wanted to understand how you did it. How you bought it. How you saved. How you managed on your own. I let that sit between us for a moment. The snow kept falling, white and silent, covering the parking lot, the cars, the berry branches of the trees outside. Your brother thinks your father wants the reprinting for his son, my mother said quietly. But I don't think that's true. I think your father wants to know how you built something without anyone's help. Because he never did that himself. He always had family. He always had someone to lean on. And he's rooting to wonder if that was the right way. I was quiet. The wheels in my head turned slowly, like a car stuck in snow. Mom, I said finally. When Dad gets home tomorrow, I want to be there. Not to argue. To listen. That's all I'm asking. She squeezed my hand. That's all I've ever asked. I stayed at the hospital for another hour. My brother never came back. He sent a text to my mother, short and efficient, saying he'd pick my father up in the morning if she needed a ride. He didn't mention me. He didn't ask if I was there. When I left, the snow had let up. The parking lot was empty, just my car and a single truck near the emergency entrance. I sat in the driver's seat and watched the hospital lights glow against the white sky. The receipt my mother had shown me was still in my pocket. I pulled it out and read the blue circle again. My name. The paid-in full stamp. My father's name above it. A document that had passed from my hand to a hospital clerk to a billing department to my mother's coat pocket to mine. None of it had been acknowledged at the dinner table. None of it had been celebrated. But my mother had kept it. She'd folded it small and write it with her, a receipt for something that couldn't be bought or sold. I put the receipt back in my pocket and root the car. The heater blew cold at first, then slowly warm. I sat with my hands on the wheel and thought about tomorrow. The conversation my father wanted to have. The other thing he hadn't named. The mystery he'd see a ride into the hospital with him, wrapped up with his stitches and his concussion and his old tired RT. I drove back to Susan's, the tires slow on the slick roads. When I walked in, she was washing dishes in the kitchen. How is he? She asked. Concussed. Stitched up. Talking more than he ever does. That's good, right? I don't know. I hung my coat by the door. He said we need to talk tomorrow. All of us. Not about the appointment. About something else. Susan turned off the water and dried her hands. What's something else? I don't know. My mom mentioned my uncle Arthur. The one who died last year. He had a business and he sold it and then he regretted not giving more to his kids. I sat down at the kitchen table. My father came home from that funeral and sta route asking about my appointment. Not to take it. To figure out how I did it. Figure out how you did what, how I managed. I read at the grain of the wood table. How I saved. How I bought something on my own. I think he wants to know if he could have done the same thing. If he'd had the chance. Susan sat down across from me. So your father might be having a late life crisis about his choices. Maybe. Or maybe he just fell on his head and got confused. I rubbed my eyes. But my mom said he was different before the fall. She said the phone call with my brother made him upset. He went outside to shovel snow and then he fell. That's a hell of a coincidence. I know. I looked at her. I don't know what's happening anymore. Last night I walked out of that house and told myself I was done. Today I sat in a hospital room and watched my father say more about family in 15 minutes than he said in 30 years. People change, Susan said. Or they start saying what they really think. Usually when they're scared. Scared of what? Of running out of time. She reached across the table and took my hand. Your father's old, Linda. So's your mother. People with concussions talk funny, and old people with concussions talk funny and real. That man you saw today. That might be the real version. The one without the poker face. I thought about that as I lay on her couch that night, the same quilt, the same fairy lights. My phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times. I ignored it. It buzzed again. I picked it up. My brother, you were at the hospital. Mom told me. You should have called me. I would have come. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down and read at the ceiling. Tomorrow, my father wanted to talk. Tomorrow, everything might be different. Or everything might be the same. I closed my eyes and let the snow fall outside Susan's window carry me to sleep. The last thought I had was about the receipt in my pocket. My name. The paid in full stamp. The quiet proof that I'd been there all along, doing the work, paying the bills, being family even when family didn't seem to want me. Tomorrow I would find out if they'd ever noticed. The sun came up pale and thin over Susan's back fence. I woke with the receipt still in my coat pocket and the memory of my father's words pressing against the inside of my skull like a bruise I couldn't quite feel. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table while Susan got ready for work. You sure you're okay on your own today? She pulled her hair into a ponytail, searching for her keys on the counter. I need to go see my father later. He's supposed to be discharged this morning. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. I'll stop by and pick him up. Your brother said he'd do that. My brother never does what he says he'll do. And I need to hear what my father wants to tell me. Susan found her keys and stopped at the door. Call me if anything happens. And Linda. Don't let them railroad you into anything. You've got a spine. Use it. She left. I finished my coffee and washed the mug, then stood in the quiet kitchen, trying to figure out what I was doing. Picking up my father from the hospital felt like an act of peace. Driving him home would mean re-entering the house I'd walked out of 2 nights ago. I'd said I was done. But my mother's receipt and my father's strange openness had shifted something, just slightly, like a door that had been stuck for years and suddenly given a fraction of an inch. I drove to the hospital. The snow from the night before had melted into gray slush along the roads, and the sky looked like old cotton, heavy and low. The hospital parking lot was busier than the day before. Christmas was over, people had places to be, accidents to report, checkups to schedule. My father was sitting on the edge of the bed when I walked into room 312, his feet on the floor, his street clothes on. The gauze was gone from his head, replaced by a small white bandage over the stitches. He looked older in the daylight, the skin around his eyes paper thin, his hands resting on his knees like they needed the support. Linda. He looked up, and his voice was quiet, almost subdued. Your mother said you'd come. Mom told me you were getting discouraged. She had an appointment she couldn't reschedule. My appointment. He stood up ruefully, testing his balance. She had a checkup. She's been putting it off for months. I told her to go. You're a good enough driver. He walked to the chair by the window where his coat hung, moving slower than I remembered, his steps measured and careful. The fall had shaken more than his head. It had taken something from his confidence. Your brother called, he said, sliding his arms into the sleeves. Said he'd be here to pick me up. I told him not to bother. I told him you'd come. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. The drive home was quiet. My father sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead at the road, his hands folded in his lap. The heater hummed. The wiper scraped the last of the morning frost off the windshield. Take the back road, he said as we approached the turn onto Main Street. I want to see something. I took the back road. It wound past the old industrial part of town, the brick buildings empty and bow-eyed, the railroad tracks rusted and abandoned. At the end of the road, the lane opened onto the old market district, and there, on the corner, was the shop. My mother's shop. The one my grandfather had left to her. The one she'd hidden from me for 30 years. I hadn't known it was on this route. I hadn't planned to see it. But my father pointed with his chin, just a small motion toward the passenger window. You see that place, he asked. I see it. Your mother's. Passed down from her father. He was a tailor. Made suits for the bankers and the lawyers back when this town had bankers and lawyers. He paused, his breath fogging the window. He never liked me much. Your grandfather. He thought I was lazy. Thought I didn't work hard enough to deserve his daughter. I drove slowly past the storefront. The sign was gone, the awning faded to gray, the windows dark. But I could see the shape of it, the old bones, the pressed tin ceiling that might still be there underneath the years of dust and neglect. He didn't like you because you worked at the factory, I said. Mom told me once. He didn't like me because I didn't have ambition. My father's voice was flat, matter of fact. He had ambition for his daughter. Wanted her to marry someone who'd take care of her, not someone who'd need her to take care of him. And he was right. I couldn't take care of her. Not the way he could. I didn't argue. The street was empty, the shops closed, the whole town holding its breath after the holidays. Your grandfather had a philosophy, my father continued. He said every person needs their own piece of ground. A place no one can take from them. That's why he bought this shop with his own money. Paid in cash. Never had a mortgage. And that's why he left it to your mother, even after she married me. He knew what I was. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He turned to look at me, his eyes clear and steady. I've never said any of this out loud. Not once. I've read it like a rock in my pocket for 40 years. And I'm tired of writing it. I pulled the car over to the curb. The engine idled, the heat still blowing, the wipers still scraping. I turned to face him. Then say it. He took a breath, long and slow. When you were born, I was disappointed. Not because you were a girl. Because you were another mouth to feed, another body to clothe, another person to worry about when I couldn't even take care of the ones I already had. Your brother was 5. He had needs. School. Clothes. Toys. I couldn't give him anything extra because I had nothing extra to give. And then you came along, and it felt like one more thing I was failing at. I watched his face, the deep lines around his mouth, the tremor in his jaw. But you grew up, he continued, and you were different. You were always reading something, always figuring something out. You didn't need things the way your brother did. You built things for yourself, like you were gathering sticks and stones to make a house. And I didn't know what to do with that. You never needed me. And that made me angry. I opened my mouth to speak, but he held up a hand. Wait. Let me finish. I'm old and I'm tired, and this is the only time I'm going to say it. That shop belonged to your mother and it belongs to you. Your grandfather made sure of that. I tried to talk her out of it 100 times. Tried to convince her to sell it, to use the money for your brother's house, for your nephew's school. But she wouldn't. She never would. And I hated her for that. I hated her stubbornness. But now I see it for what it was. She was keeping the one thing she could give you. The one thing I never could. Dad, you're not like me. He looked at me straight, his eyes wet but not crying. You're like him. You're a grandfather. You build things. You work. You don't take what doesn't belong to you. And I've spent your whole life trying to take from you because I was jealous. Jealous that you had a grandfather who believed in you. Jealous that you had a mother who loved you without condition. Jealous that you had ambition. I had none. And I didn't want you to have it either. The car was quiet. The heater clicked off, then clicked back on. Somewhere down the street a car honked, and the sound felt far away, like it was coming from another world. I used to think my father was the worst person I knew, I said quietly. I thought he looked at me and saw a girl who didn't belong. I thought he measured me against my brother and found me wanting. I did measure you. His voice cracked. And you were never wanting. I just didn't know how to see what was in front of me. I read at the shop through the windshield, at the old awning and the dark windows, at the faint outline of the sign that had been painted over years ago. My grandfather had left it to me. He'd known, somehow, that I would need it. That I would need something that was mine. Something no one could take away. We should go home, I said finally. Mom's waiting. My father nodded. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, past the shop, past the old market district, past the row of abandoned worry houses and rigged-up storefronts. The house on Oak Street looked the same as it always did. White clapboard, green shutters, porch swing with peeling paint. My mother's car was in the driveway, a gray sedan older than my own, with a dent in the rear bumper she'd never bothered to fix. My brother's silver Ford was parked on the street. He came after all, my father said, and there was no surprise in his voice. Just resignation. He said he'd pick you up. Maybe he was trying to make good on it. Maybe. He unbuckled his seatbelt and sat for a moment, one hand on the door handle. Linda, before we go in. Your brother's going to bring up the reprinting again. He's been thinking about it for months, and he's not going to stop. I know. I want you to tell him no. I want you to say the word no and not explain yourself. Not justify. Not negotiate. No. He looked at me. That's the word I never learned to say to anyone. I spent my whole life saying yes to things I should have said no to. Your brother. Your mother. Every request, every demand. I said yes because I was afraid of conflict. And I made you pay for that fear. I didn't know if I'd ever heard my father say the word fear out loud before. It hung in the air between us like a coin spinning on a table. Okay, I said. No. He smiled, just be a rely, and opened the door. We walked up the path together, his steps slow and careful. The porch steps creaked under our weight. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and something baking, my mother's way of filling the air with normalcy when things were falling apart. Dad, you're home. My brother came through the kitchen door, wiping his hands on a dish towel. I came to pick you up, but you were already gone. Mom said Linda got you. She got me. My father settled into his armchair by the window, the one with the worn armrests, the one he'd sat in every night for 30 years. We had a talk. What about my brother's eyes slid to me, suspicious. About the shop. About Linda's grandfather. About the reprinting. About everything. My father leaned back, his hands resting on the armrests. Sit down, both of you. Your mother's making tea. We're going to have a conversation. My brother sat on the edge of the sofa, his body angled toward the door, ready to leave. I sat across from him on the ottoman. My mother came in with a tray of teacups and set them on the coffee table, then sat in the armchair beside my father. This is not about the reprinting, my father said. Not right now. This is about what we're going to do as a family. We're fine as a family, my brother said. We've always been fine. You've always been fine. My father's voice was flat. You've always had what you needed. Linda hasn't. And that's on me. My brother's face reddened. Dad, I don't know what she told you, she didn't tell me anything. I told her. I told her I was wrong. I told her I've been wrong for 30 years. My father looked at my brother. You're my son. I love you. But I've given you everything and given her nothing. And I stopped seeing it a long time ago. I stopped seeing the difference because it was easier not to. But your grandfather saw it. He saw it and he made sure she had something I couldn't take away. And that something is the shop. Not the reprinting. The shop. The room was silent. My mother's hands were folded in her lap, white-knuckled. My brother's face had gone from red to pale. What shop? He asked. What are you talking about? The building on Massachusetts Rocket Street. My father looked at him. Your grandmother's father left it to your mother, and he left it specifically to Linda. Not to the family. To her. I've known about it for decades. I never told you because I didn't want you to know. My brother was on his feet now. You hid an asset from me from the family. I hid nothing. It was never yours. My father's voice didn't rise. It was always hers. I just didn't want to face that. I didn't want to face that your grandfather trusted her more than he trusted me. More than he trusted you. The word trust seemed to hit my brother like a physical blow. He stood there, hands at his sides, breathing hard. We need to think about this, my brother said finally. We need to sit down as a family and work out what's fair. Fair. My father laughed, a dry, weary sound. You want fair. Linda paid your medical bills, your mother's medical bills, and she never asked for a thank you. She bought her own apartment with no help. She built a life without us. And we've been trying to tear it down so you could have it. That's not fair. That's theft. I can't believe you're taking her side. I'm not taking sides. I'm finally telling the truth. My father reached for his teacup with trembling hands. Sit down, Frank. This conversation isn't over. My brother didn't sit. He stood by the door, coat in hand, his jaw tight. I don't have to listen to this. I'm leaving. He yanked the door open. And when you're ready to talk about what's actually important, I'll be at home. The door slammed behind him. The house shook with the impact. My mother read at the closed door, her hands still folded, her face unreadable. Mom, I said. Are you okay? She nodded slowly. I've been waiting for that for 30 years. I just didn't know I was waiting. My father reached over and put his hand on hers. They sat like that, in the quiet, the tea cling on the table, the snow beginning to fall again outside the window. Linda, my father said, not looking at me, the shop's been empty for years. The roof needs work. The plumbing probably needs replacing. But it's yours. Your mother and I talked about it this morning. We want you to have it. I looked at my mother. She nodded, a small, firm movement. We don't have much else to give you, she said. But that building has been waiting for you since before you were born. I looked down at my hands, at the palms that had held so many keys, so many bills, so many pieces of a life I'd built alone. And now I held a key I'd never expected to receive. A key that unlocked not a building but a door. A door that had been closed for 30 years. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Don't say anything. My father leaned back in his chair. Just go see the place. Figure out what you want to do with it. It's yours now. It was always yours. I stayed for dinner that night, the first dinner I'd had at that table since Christmas Eve. We ate in NEAR silence, the conversation exhausted, the emotions drained. But when I walked out the door to go back to Susan's, my mother handed me an envelope. The deed, she said. I've had it in my dresser for years. Under my nightgowns, so your father wouldn't find it. But now he knows. It's time you have it. I took the envelope and hugged her, tight and long. Thank you, Mom. Go see the building tomorrow, she whispered. Take Susan. Take someone you trust. And don't let anyone talk you out of what's yours. I drove back to Susan's with the deed on the passenger seat beside me. The snow was falling soft and steady, covering the tracks of the day, the arguments and the confessions and the door that had slammed shut on my brother's anger. The building on Massachusetts Roquette Street. My grandfather's shop. My mother's secret. My inheritance. I didn't know what I'd do with it. But for the first time in 31 years, I had something my family couldn't take away. Something my father had finally admitted was mine. The envelope with the deed sat on Susan's kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. I'd ride it from my mother's house to the CAR, from the CAR to Susan's couch, from the couch to the kitchen where it rested against the salt shaker like a question I wasn't ready to answer. Susan didn't push. She just watched me circle it, making coffee, washing dishes, pretending the thick cream-colored paper wasn't there. On the 4th morning, I opened it. The deed was old, the paper soft and yellowed at the edges, the ink faded but legible. My mother's name in CA refill script, and beneath it, an addendum typed on a separate sheet, upon the death of the undersigned, this property shall pass to Linda Chin, granddaughter of the original purchaser. The date was 2 months before my first birthday. I traced the words with my finger. My grandfather had never met me as a person. He'd known me only as a possibility, a baby who might need something solid to stand on someday. And he'd made sure I had it. You going to see it today? Susan leaned against the doorframe, a mug of tea in her hands. Yeah. I think I am. Want company? I want someone who won't tell me to sell it. I'm your girl. She grabbed her coat. The drive to Massachusetts Forget Street was familiar now, the route my father had pointed out from the hospital, the turns I'd memorized without meaning to. The sky was gray but dry, the snow mostly melted into the arcade puddles along the curbs. The shop sat on the corner like it had been waiting, patient and still, for someone to come back. I parked across the street and sat for a moment, just looking. The awning was a faded green, the edges frayed, the metal frame rusted in spots. The windows were d'arc, blocked from the inside by what looked like old newspaper pages yellowed with age. The door was wood, painted red once, now chipped down to be a grain in patches. Let's go, I said, and got out. The key my mother had given me was small and brass, worn smooth from decades of use. It turned in the lock with a resistance that gave way slowly, like the door had to think about whether to open. When it did, the air that rushed out was cold and dry and smelled of dust and old fabric and something sweet, like dried lavender. The inside was a cavern of forgotten things. A wooden counter ran along the left wall, its surface scratched and SCA red. Shelves lined the back, empty now but ring the ghosts of bowls of cloth, spools of thread, patterns stacked in neat piles. The tin ceiling I'd glimpsed from the street was intact, pressed roses and leaves forming a pattern that caught the dim light. A staircase hugged the right wall, narrow and steep, leading up to a second floor I hadn't known existed. Susan let out a low whistle. Linda. This is incredible. It's a mess. I ran my hand along the counter, feeling the rs of use in the grooves. It needs everything. Roof, plumbing, electrical, windows. Probably more than I can afford. Look at the ceiling. She pointed up. They don't make that anymore. That's craftsmanship. This building was built to last. I walked deeper into the space. The floor was wide planks, creaking under my weight, worn smooth in the center from decades of footsteps. A back room opened off the main space, smaller, with a window that faced an alley and a sink that had gone dry long ago. Beyond that, a bathroom. The fixtures were ancient, porcelain stained yellow, the pipes visible through a hole in the wall. I stood in the middle of the back room and tried to imagine it alive. My grandfather measuring a customer for a suit, chalk in hand, pins between his teeth. My mother as a girl, sitting in the corner with a book, watching him work. The smell of pressing cloth and steam. The low hum of the sewing machine. The quiet rhythm of a man who made things with his hands. Susan came up behind me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I don't know what to do with it. It's too big for one person. Too much work. Too much money. Or, she said slowly, it's exactly what you've been looking for and you just haven't admitted it yet. I turned to face her. What do you mean you've been working for other people your whole life? Desk jobs. Rent. Bills. Nothing that felt like yours. She spread her arms to encompass the room. This could be yours. Really yours. You could fix it up and make it anything you want. I looked at the dusty shelves, the worn counter, the tin ceiling roses. The possibilities were dizzying. A studio. A shop. A place to work with my hands, to make something tangible, to leave a marque that wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. I don't have the skills, I said. Nobody has the skills until they learn them. I walked back out to the main space and sat on the edge of the counter. The wood creaked but held. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The ceiling. The shelves. The windows. The narrow staircase with its worn treads. Let's go upstairs, Susan said. I want to see what's up there. The stairs groaned under our weight. The second floor was a single open room with sloped ceilings and 3 tall windows that faced the street. Dust motes danced in the pale light. The floor was warped in places, the walls lined with old wallpaper peeling in strips. A small fireplace sat against the back wall, the mantel empty, the heat cold. This is a room, I said. Someone lived here. Your grandfather probably did. Or maybe he rented it out. Susan walked to the window and looked down at the street. You can see the whole market from here. This must have been beautiful, back in the day. I stood in the center of the room and let myself imagine. A bed against the far wall. A small table near the window. A rug on the worn floor RDS. A place that was my own, above a place that was my own, removed from the noise of the world. That the thought made my chest tight with hope and fear are in equal measure. Okay, I said. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fix this place. Susan turned from the window, grinning. That's the Linda I know. I spent the next week making calls. Contractors came and went, each one leaving a different estimate, a different timeline, a different version of what the building needed. The roof was the biggest expense, a full replacement with new flashing and insulation. The plumbing needed to be brought up to code. The electrical was outdated and dangerous. The windows needed new glass and frames. The staircase needed reinforcement. I sat at Susan's kitchen table late at night, adding columns of numbers, watching my savings dwindle on paper. The APA meant I'd saved for 5 years was a safety net, but using it felt like jumping off a cliff. I called my mother. Mom, I'm going to fix up the shop. But it's going to take everything I have. On the other end of the line, she was quiet for a moment. Your father and I have some money saved. Not much. But it's yours if you need it. Mom, I can't take your savings. You're not taking. We're giving. It's the same money your grandfather left for you. We never spent it. We never touched it. It's been sitting in an account waiting for this moment. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I didn't need their help, that I'd built my life alone and I could keep building alone. But the numbers on my spreadsheet told a different story. The roof alone would swallow half my savings. The plumbing would take another quarter. I'd be left with nothing, living in an empty shell of a building with no heat and no water. Okay, I said finally. Thank you. The work root in March. The roofers came first, a crew of 4 men who worked from dawn until dusk, stripping the old shingles and laying new ones. I stood on the sidewalk and watched them, the sound of hammers echoing down the empty street. Susan brought coffee in the mornings. The neighbors, a hot RDWA restore owner and a retired schoolteacher, introduced themselves and asked what I was planning. I don't know yet, I told them. Something with fabric. Something with hands. That old place used to be a tailor shop, the hot RDWA restore owner said. Old Mr. Chin ran it for 40 years. Best suits in town. My father got his wedding suit from him. Fitted it right here, in that front window. I felt a pang of something, pride or loss, I couldn't tell. He was my grandfather. Well, then. The man nodded. Good to see family keeping it going. My brother found out about the work through my mother. He called one evening while I was cleaning debris out of the back room. Linda, I heard you're dumping a fortune into that old building. I pressed the phone to my ear with my shoulder. It's my building, Frank. I can do what I want with it. Dad told me Mom gave you money. That's family money. You didn't have the right to take that without consulting us. She didn't give me family money. She gave me my inheritance. The one grandfather left for me 30 years ago. He was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was flat, controlled. I'm going to come see the place. I have a right to see what you're doing with it. You don't have a right to anything. I set down the bucket I'd been carrying. But you can come. I'll be here Saturday. He came on Saturday, as promised. I was scraping old wallpaper in the upstairs room when I heard the front door open and his footsteps on the creaking floor. I came down the stairs to find him standing in the middle of the main space, hands on his hips, sta ring at the ceiling. Look at this place, he said. Look at the mess. It's a work in progress. Progress. You're spending thousands of dollars on a building that's been empty for 15 years. This isn't progress. This is throwing money away. Frank, what do you want? He turned to face me, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Not anger. Something closer to fear. I want to know why you get everything. Why Mom and Dad gave you this place and didn't give me anything. Because grandfather left it to me. Not to you. Not to the family. To me. And that's fair, that's how family treats each other. I took a step closer. Let me ask you something. When I was in the hospital with appendicitis, where were you when I needed a cosigner for my first appointment? Who helped me? When Dad needed his MRI, who paid for it? You've never been there for me, Frank. Not once. And you want to know why I get the building? Because I've been there for this family. I've been there even when you weren't. His face reddened. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. I kept my voice low and steady. This building is mine. I'm fixing it up. And after it's done, I'm going to make something with it. Something that honors grandfather and something that's mine. You can be part of that if you want. Or you can keep being angry. But the building stays. We stood there in the dusty light, the silence between us thick as old wallpaper. My brother's hands were clenched at his sides. I watched his jaw tighten and release. I don't understand you, he said finally. You walked out on Christmas. You said you were done with us. And now you're here, in this building, with Mom's money, acting like everything's fine. Nothing's fine. I leaned against the counter. But I'm not done with this family. I'm just done letting you take from me. There's a difference. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. The door didn't slam this time. It closed softly, like he was thinking about something. I stood alone in the quiet and let myself breathe. The roof was done. The plumbing was next. The electric would follow. And eventually, the walls would be smooth and the floors would be sanded and the windows would let in light again. My grandfather had built this place with his hands. He'd measured and cut and stitched, one piece at a time. And now I was doing the same thing. Not with cloth, but with wood and wire and plaster and vision. Piece by piece, day by day. My mother called that evening. Linda, your brother came home looking pale. He went straight to his room and didn't come out for dinner. I didn't mean to upset him. Upset is good. Her voice was firm. Upset means he's thinking. He's been coasting for years, never thinking about anyone but himself. Maybe this will make him look up from his own life for once. I didn't know if she was right. But I let myself hope. The building was changing. And maybe, just maybe, the family could change too. April came with rain and the slow thaw of things I'd kept frozen. The building on Massachusetts Roquette Street began to take shape. The roof held against the spring showers, the new windows let in light that fell across the sanded floors like bars of gold, and the plumbing, finally, after 3 weeks of disruption, flowed clean and hot through the old pipes. I stood in the back room one evening, watching steam rise from the sink, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, possibility. My mother came to see the progress on a Sunday. She walked through the main space with her hands clasped behind her back, looking at everything, touching nothing. When she reached the counter, she stopped and rested her palm flat on the worn wood. Your grandfather stood here every day for 40 years, she said. He measured, he cut, he sewed. He never took a day off except Sundays, and even then he'd come in the afternoon to sweep and organize. This counter was his desk, his table, his everything. I stood beside her. Did you ever work here for a while, when I was young? Before I married your father. I helped with the books and the customers. I hated it at first. I wanted to be outside, with my friends, living a normal life. But after he passed, I missed it. I missed the sound of the sewing machine and the smell of the fabric and the way the light came through the front window in the afternoons. She turned to me, her eyes bright. You're going to bring it back to life, Linda. I know you will. I didn't have the heart to tell her I wasn't sure what I was bringing back. I had ideas, sketches on napkins, plans that changed every week. A fabric shop. A small tailoring business. A workshop for classes. Nothing felt permanent. Nothing felt right. Susan came by after my mother left, rang takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on the floor of the main space, our backs against the freshly painted wall, and ate noodles from Bowie Road containers. You look like you're thinking too hard, she said. I'm trying to figure out what to do with this place. I've got all this space and no plan. She chewed thoughtfully. You don't need a plan right away. You just need to start doing something. The rest will come. What if it doesn't? Then you'll have a really nice empty building with good plumbing and a solid roof. She grinned. That's not nothing. I laughed, and the sound echoed in the empty room. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. The next morning, I went to the hardware store and bought paint. Pale gray for the walls, white for the ceiling, a soft blue for the trim. I worked alone, covering the old wallpaper and the water stains and the years of neglect with fresh color. The work was slow and methodical, the kind of labor that let my mind wander while my hands stayed busy. I thought about my grandfather as I painted. I'd never known him, not really. He died when I was 5, and my memories were fragments, a warm hand on my head, a peppermint from his pocket, the sound of his voice speaking in Cantonese that I couldn't understand. But I had his building, his counter, his legacy. And I was beginning to understand that legacy wasn't about the things he'd left. It was about the things he'd known. That a woman needed a place of her own. That family wasn't just blood, but choice. My brother called halfway through the afternoon. I answered without thinking, paintbrush still in hand. Linda, I want to see the place again. The request caught me off guard. Okay. When now, if you're there. I was there. He came 30 minutes later, alone, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched against the spring chill. He walked through the main space slowly, taking in the new paint, the new windows, the refinished floors. You did all this yourself, most of it. I hired help for the roof and the plumbing. He stopped at the counter and ran his hand across the surface, just like my mother had done. I've been thinking about what you said. About me never being there for you. I set down the paintbrush. Frank, I didn't say that to make you feel bad. I said it because it's true. I know. He turned to face me. And I've been thinking about why. Why I never showed up for you. I waited. The room was quiet, just the sound of the wind rattling the new windows. I was jealous, he said. When we were kids, you were always the one who did things on your own. You got good grades without anyone helping. You got into college without dad's connections. You bought a car, an apartment, all of it on your own. And I needed help for everything. I still need help for everything. I've never built anything by myself in my entire life. I didn't know what to say. This was the closest my brother had ever come to admitting a weakness. Dad called me the other night, he continued. He told me about the day he drove you past this building. He told me what he said about grandfather. About being jealous of him, too. And I realized I've been saying the same thing. Jealousy. Not anger. Just jealousy. He looked at the ceiling, the pressed tin roses, the light filtering through the clean glass. This place was always yours. Grandfather made sure of it. And I've spent 30 years trying to take it from you because I couldn't stand that you had something I didn't. Frank, I know. It's not okay. But I wanted you to know I see it now. He dropped his hands to his sides. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you. We stood in the quiet, the paint drying on the walls, the dust settling on the floor. The sun moved across the windows, casting long shadows. Can I ask you something? I said. Sure. Did you ever think about what you would have done with this building if you had gotten it? He considered the question. I would have sold it. Immediately. Use the money for the down payment, for the school district, for everything I've been asking you for. He laughed, a short, humorless sound. I would have torn it down and built something new, something that had nothing to do with grandfather or the family. I wouldn't have painted it or fixed it or kept it alive. I looked around at the pale gray walls, the white ceiling, the soft blue trim. The building was coming back to life. And I realized, in that moment, that I'd been wrong about my brother. He didn't want to take from me. He wanted what I had, not as a possession, but as an ability. The ability to build. The ability to sustain. The ability to hold on to something and make it work. I'm not going to sell it, I said. I'm going to make it into something. I don't know what yet. But something. I know. He nodded. I can see that now. He stayed for another hour, helping me finish the trim in the back room. We worked side by side, not talking much, but the silence wasn't heavy. It was something closer to peace. My brother, who had never lifted a paintbrush in his life, was covered in blue paint by the time we finished, a streak across his cheek and a spot on his sleeve. Your shirt, I said. Worth it. He wiped his hands on his jeans. I'll come back. Tomorrow, if you want. I can help with the floors. I almost said no. Almost told him I had it under control. But I stopped myself. Okay. Tomorrow. 10 o'clock. He left, and I locked the door behind him. I walked through the main space one more time, running my hand along the fresh paint, feeling the smoothness of the walls. The building was beginning to feel like mine. Not just legally, but truly. Every coat of paint, every sanded boa RD, every window I'd cleaned and sealed had become a part of me. My mother called that evening. Linda, your brother came home covered in paint. He said he was helping you. Is that true? It's true. He painted trim. He painted trim. She sounded astonished. Your brother hasn't painted anything since he was 12 and he painted the neighbor's fence for a school project. He's changed. Or maybe he's trying. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, your father is going to have a heart attack when he hears this. But a happy one. I laughed. Tell Dad I said hello. Linda. I'm proud of you. For the building. For the work. For letting your brother in. I leaned against the counter, the phone pressed to my ear. I'm trying, Mom. That's all I can do. Trying is enough. The next day, my brother showed up at 10, as promised. He brought sandwiches and a thermos of coffee. We worked on the floors until our knees ached and our hands were raw. He complained about the dust, the splinters, the endless sanding. But he kept working. You know, he said, pausing to stretch his back, I never thought I'd be doing this. Sanding floors in a building I tried to steal from my sister. You're still my brother. Even after everything, even after everything. I looked at him, this man I'd grown up with, fought with, resented and loved in equal measure. You showed up, Frank. That counts. The building began to take shape in a way that felt like it had a purpose. The front window, cleaned and repaired, let in light that made the paint glow. The floors, sanded and sealed, gleamed in the afternoon sun. The back room, with its new sink and refinished cabinets, became a small kitchen. The upstairs, the room where someone had once lived, became a quiet retreat. I sta rude to bring things from my apartment, piece by piece. A chair. A table. A rug that had belonged to my grandmother. The building was no longer empty. It was beginning to hold my life, my history, my future. One evening, after my brother had left and the sun was setting, I stood at the front window and looked out at Massachusetts Regent Street. The street was quiet, the shops closed, the evening light soft and golden. I could see the hardwa store across the way, the old brick buildings, the parked cars and the empty sidewalks. This was my town. My street. My building. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. A shop. A studio. Something that would honor my grandfather and my mother and the long line of people who had held this space before me. But I knew, with a certainty that settled in my chest like a warm stone, that I would find the answer. I had time. I had space. I had the building, and the building had me. My mother came by the next week. She walked through the main space with TRS in her eyes. It looks like a real place, she said. Like a place where people could come. That's the idea. I gestured around me. I'm just not sure what kind of place yet. She touched the counter, the newly painted walls, the clean windows. Your grandfather used to say that a building tells you what it wants to be. You just have to listen. I looked around at the space, at the light and the wood and the fresh paint. I listened. And after a long moment, I heard it. Not a voice, exactly, but a feeling. A direction. I think I want to make things, I said slowly. Things with fabric. Like he did. Not suits, exactly, but something. Something that means something. My mother smiled. Then that's what you'll do. The building was almost ready. The walls were painted, the floors sealed, the windows clean. The electric was safe, the plumbing reliable, the roof solid. The counter that had held my grandfather's hands was sanded and oiled, ready to hold mine. My brother came by one last time before I opened the doors to anyone else. He brought a small plant, a spider plant in a terracotta pot, and set it on the windowsill. Grandma always had one of these in her kitchen, he said. I thought it might look good here. I looked at the plant, at its trailing green leaves, at the way it caught the light. Thank you, Frank. You're welcome. He hesitated, then added, I'm sorry, Linda. For all of it. For the appointment, for the pressure, for never showing up. I'm sorry. I hugged him. It was awkward and quick, but it was real. He hugged me back, and I felt the tension of yours loosen, just a little. Okay, I said, stepping back. Now get out. I've got work to do. He laughed and left. I stood in the quiet of the building, the spider plant on the windowsill, the sun streaming through the glass. I had a space. I had a vision. And I had a family that was rooting to find its way back to itself. I didn't know what the future would bring. But for the first time in a long time, I was ready to meet it. The spider plant sat on the windowsill like a green promise. I watered it every morning, turning the pot so the leaves reached evenly toward the light. My brother's gesture had surprised me, the plant, the apology, the hug, and I found myself replaying the moment in my head, testing the new shape of our relationship like a joint that had healed, still stiff but no longer broken. I route bringing bolts of fabric to the shop. Old inventory from a closing textile warehouse, rolls of cotton and linen and woolen colors that reminded me of my grandmother's den. I stacked them on the refurbished shelves, arranging and rearranging until the pattern felt right. Customers began to trickle in, neighbors who remembered the old tailor shop, curious about the new face behind the counter. Are you opening a fabric store? The RDWA store owner asked, leaning against the doorframe. Something like that, I said. I'm still figuring it out. Well, whatever it is, it looks good. The old place needed some life. It's been sleeping for too long. I smiled and went back to arranging the bolts. The building was waking up. My mother came every Tuesday, bringing lunch and a fresh batch of her stories about the old days. She sat in the front window with a sandwich and watched the street while I worked. Your father wants to come see the place, she said one afternoon. He's been asking for weeks, but he doesn't want to intrude. He's not intruding. It's his building too. Sort of. Not his. Your grandfather's. But he feels connected to it now. The hospital changed him. I wasn't sure the hospital had changed my father. But something had. He'd softened at the edges, the sharpness worn down by time and pain and the slow realization that he was running out of chances to say what needed to be said. Tell him to come on Saturday, I said. I'll make coffee. Saturday arrived clear the first real day of spring. I opened the front windows wide, letting the breeze carry the smell of damp earth and new grass through the shop. The spider plant rustled in the air. I'd bought a small table and 2 chairs for the front window, a place to sit and watch the world go by. My father came alone. My mother stayed home to see Kay, she said, but I suspected she wanted to give us space. He walked through the door slowly, leaning slightly on a new cane, his head bandage long gone, only a thin white scar visible at his hairline. He stopped in the middle of the room and looked around. Your grandfather's place, he said quietly. It looks like him. Tidy. Purposeful. The same feeling I used to get when I walked in here back when I was courting your mother. Everything in its right place. Dad, I haven't done much. Just painted and sanded and fixed the basics. Basics everything. He walked to the counter and touched it, just as my mother had done, just as my brother had done. This is where he stood. This is where he worked. And now it's where you'll work. I made coffee and we sat at the small table by the window. My father looked out at Massachusetts Market Street, the cars passing, the hot RDWA store across the way, the children on their way to the arcade. I never told you about the night your grandfather died, he said. I never told anyone. Not even your mother. But I think you should know. I set down my cup. Okay. It was winter, like now. He'd been sick for a while, but we didn't know how sick. He kept working, kept coming here every day, even when he could be a rely stand. The day before he died, he called me to his house. I went because your mother asked me to. She was too upset to go herself. My father paused, his eyes distant. He was in bed, thin as a rail, but his eyes were still sharp. He looked at me and he said, "Howie Road, you don't like me. That's fine. I don't like you either. But we have the same person in common. My daughter. Your wife. And we both want what's best for her." I watched my father's face, the way the lines deepened as he remembered. "I was angry," he continued. "I was always angry with him. He'd never approved of me, never thought I was good enough. But that night, lying there, he didn't see a re about my flaws. He see a read about your mother. And he see a read about you." He turned to look at me. He said, "The building is for Linda. Not for my daughter. Not for my son-in-law. For my granddaughter. She's going to need it. You won't understand why until later. But she'll need it." I couldn't speak. The coffee had gone cold in my hands. "I didn't understand," my father said. "I thought it was his way of controlling things from beyond the grave. I thought he was punishing me, keeping a part of the family estate out of my reach. But he wasn't punishing me. He was protecting you. He saw something I didn't see. He saw how this family was going to treat you, and he made sure you had a place to go." My father reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was rough and warm. "I'm not a good man, Linda. I've made mistakes. I've hurt you in ways I can't undo. But I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. And I want to help you with this building. Not with money. With my hands. I'm not as strong as I used to be, but I can still lift a paintbrush. I can still sweep a floor. I can still be here." I squeezed his hand. "Dad, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I want to be part of what you're building. I want to be part of your life." We sat in the quiet, the breeze coming through the open window, the spider plant casting a small shadow on the sill. The building felt full, not with things, but with presence. With history. With the people who had loved it and worked in it and fought over it. That evening, after my father left, I walked through the shop and touched the walls. The paint was dry, the floors smooth, the windows clean. The fabric shelves were full, the counter ready, the small table by the front window a place for conversation. I climbed the narrow stairs to the upstairs room and stood in the center. The sloped ceiling, the tall windows, the fireplace cold and empty. This room, too, was rooting to come alive. I'd brought a bed, a small dresser, a reading lamp. A place to rest, to think, to be alone. The building was no longer just a building. It was a home. Not the home I'd grown up in, but a home I'd made with my own hands, with the help of the people who loved me. The people I'd thought had stopped loving me, but who were finding their way back. My brother called late that night. Dad told me he came by. He said the place looks amazing. It does. He helped me with the gazebo ARDS. He helped you with the gazebo ARDS. Frank laughed. That's not something I ever thought I'd hear. Things change. Yeah. I guess they do. He paused. Linda, I've been thinking. I know I can't make up for everything. But I want to do something. Something that shows I'm serious about being part of your life. You don't have to prove anything. I want to. I want to help with the building. Not just painting and sanding. Something bigger. I know a guy who does custom woodwork. He could build shelves for the back room. Real shelves, the kind that fit the space perfectly. I'll pay for it. My treat. I leaned against the counter, the phone arm against my ear. Frank, that's going to be expensive. I know. I've been saving. For something else. But this is more important. I didn't argue. I let him have his gift. Okay. I'd love that. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see the shelves. The shelves came 2 weeks later, installed by a craftsman who worked with the patience of someone who loved his trade. They were made of cherry wood, and rich, fitting the back room like they'd been built for it. Which they had. I stood in the back room and ran my hand along the smooth wood. The shelves were perfect. They held bolts of fabric, spools of thread, the tools of the trade I was slowly learning. My grandfather would have approved. My mother came to see the shelves. She brought my father with her, and they walked through the building together, their steps slow, their hands intertwined. Your brother did this? My father asked. Frank paid for it. He wanted to help. My father nodded, a slow, thoughtful movement. He's changing. You're changing. This whole family is changing. Change isn't always bad, my mother said softly. She turned to me, her eyes full of the quiet light that seemed to follow her everywhere now. When are you going to open for real, I mean? When are you going to let people come in and see what you've made? I looked around the shop. The shelves, the counter, the fabric, the light. The spider plant on the windowsill. The small table with its 2 chairs. The back room with its new kitchen. The upstairs with its bed and its lamp and its view of the street. Next week, I said. I think I'm ready. They came on the opening day. My mother and father, my brother with his wife and my nephew, Susan with a bottle of champagne and a smile. The neighbors came, the hot RDWA store owner, the retired schoolteacher, strangers who had seen the lights on and the door open and wanted to know what had woken the old building from its sleep. I stood behind the counter, the same counter my grandfather had stood behind, and watched them fill the space. The fabric on the shelves, the light from the windows, the conversations flowing like a river. The shop wasn't just a shop. It was a gathering place. A place where fabric and stories intertwined, where the past and the present read the same SQUA footage. And it was mine. My brother came to the counter at the end of the day. His wife had taken my nephew to look at the fabric, pointing out colors and patterns. Linda, he said, I want to tell you something. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm proud of you. Really proud. You built this from nothing. You fixed this place up and made it into something real. It wasn't nothing. It was grandfather's. It was always something. I know. He looked around the room. But you made it yours. And I'm proud to be your brother. I didn't know what to say. So I hugged him instead, long and tight, like I should have done years ago. The day ended with the last customers drifting out and the light fading from the windows. I locked the door behind them and stood in the quiet. The building was still. The fabric was still. The spider plant cast its small shadow on the sill. I climbed the stairs to the upstairs room and sat on the bed, looking out at the street. The stars were coming out, faint and far. The town was quiet. And I was home. The shop found its rhythm in the weeks that followed. Customers came and went, some regular RS who stopped by for fabric and conversation, others just passing through, curious about the old building that had come back to life. I worked behind the counter, cutting lengths of cotton and linen, helping customers match colors and patterns, learning the trade with each passing day. My father came every Thursday. He'd walk through the door with his cane, settle into the chair by the front window, and watch the street. Sometimes he helped with small tasks, straightening the shelves, watering the spider plant, sweeping the floor. Sometimes he just sat and talked, his voice quieter than it used to be, but steady. The fabric, he said one afternoon, reminds me of your grandmother. She used to make dresses for your mother when they were young. Nothing fancy. Just simple things. But she did it with care. I looked at the bolts on the shelves, the colors and textures. I wish I'd known her. Me too. He leaned back in the chair. She died before you were born. But your mother says you have her hands. The same way of holding things. I looked at my hands, at the fingers that had learned to measure and cut, the palms that had held tools and fabric and the weight of the work. Maybe that's enough, I said. Maybe we don't have to know someone to carry them four-way road. My father nodded slowly. Maybe. My brother came on Saturdays, bringing my nephew with him. The boy was 8, full of energy and questions, running his hands along the fabric and asking what everything was called. He liked the blue cotton best, and I cut a small piece for him to keep. This is your store, he asked, looking up at me with eyes that were exactly my brother's. Your great-grandfather's store, I said. He was a tailor. He made suits for people. Can I be a tailor? My brother laughed. You can be anything you want, kiddo. I smiled and watched them leave, the boy clutching his blue fabric, my brother's hand on his shoulder. Something in my chest loosened, a knot I'd been rang for so long I'd forgotten it was there. The shop became a place of endings and beginnings. Neighbors came to tell stories about my grandfather, about the suits he'd made and the quiet way he'd listened to his customers. Old photos read on the counter, faded and creased, showing the building as it had been decades ago. I framed them and hung them on the wall, a gallery of the past watching over the present. My mother Root coming every morning, bringing coffee and the day's news. She'd sit by the window with a piece of mending, her fingers working the needle and thread with the ease of long practice. We talked about everything and nothing, the ordinary rhythms of a life we'd both fought to reclaim. I used to worry about you, she said one morning. When you were young, I worried you'd grow up angry. That you'd leave and never come back. But you didn't leave. Not really. You just went to find your own place. I did leave, I said. I was angry. I was so angry I couldn't see anything else. And now I looked around the shop, at the fabric and the light and the faces and the photographs. Now I'm trying to see better. She reached across and squeezed my hand. That's all any of us can do. The summer came and went, the shop thriving in the warm months. Root offering simple sewing classes, teaching people how to mend and patch and make things with their hands. The classes were small, never more than 4 or 5 people, but they filled the shop with laughter and the hum of machines. My grandfather's counter became a work table for students, his legacy passed down in small stitches and refill seams. In September, my mother called with news. Your father had a checkup. The doctor says his knee is healing well. He can walk without the cane on good days. That's wonderful, Mom. Your brother and his wife are going on vacation next month. They asked if we could watch your nephew for a week. I told them yes. Busy household. She laughed. Your father's thrilled. He's been talking about teaching him how to fish, how to build a birdhouse. Things he never had time to do with you and your brother. He has time now. He does. He says he wants to make up for lost time. I thought about that as I closed the shop that evening. My father, teaching my nephew to fish. My mother, sewing by the window. My brother, building a life with his family. And me, here, in the building that had sta rooted all. The shop was quiet, the fabric shelves full, the photographs on the wall a silent testament to the past. I climbed the stairs to the upstairs room and sat at the window, watching the sunset over Market Street. I thought about the night I'd left my parents' house, the Christmas lights blinking, the snow falling, my father's voice saying words I'd see ride like stones. I thought about my mother's TRS and my brother's silence and the long ERS of feeling like I was on the outside looking in. And I thought about the building. The counter where my grandfather had worked, the shelves where I kept the fabric, the windows that let in the light. It had been a gift, waiting for me long before I knew I needed it. A place of my own. A foundation I'd built on my own terms. My father called that evening. Linda, I wanted to tell you something. Something I've been thinking about for a while. Tell me. Your mother and I are getting older. I can't do everything I used to do. The house, the RD, the repairs. It's too much. My heart tightened. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine. More than fine. I've been thinking about downsizing. Selling the house and moving into something smaller. Maybe here, in town, closer to you and the shop. I leaned against the counter, the phone RM against my EAR. Dad, you don't have to move for me. It's not just for you. It's for us. For your mother. She's been wanting to be closer to the family. And I realized, after everything, that's what I want too. I want to be part of what you're building. I didn't know what to say. The words felt too big, too heavy, too full of ERS of pain and hope. Take your time to think about it, he said. I just wanted you to know. I spent the next few weeks thinking. The shop was steady, the classes growing, the neighborhood becoming familiar. The building felt like home in a way I hadn't expected. It held my grandfather's memory and my own efforts, a history of hands and heart. My mother came by one afternoon with a stack of old photographs. I found these in the attic, she said. They're from your grandfather's time. I thought you might want them for the shop. I looked through the photos. My grandfather at the counter, measuring a customer. My grandmother in the back room, her hands on a sewing machine. The street outside, a dirt road instead of pavement, the building smaller and fewer. This is what it used to be, I said. This is what he built. And now you're building the next chapter. She put her hand on my shoulder. Your father told me about his idea. Moving closer. I think it's a good idea. You do, I do. We've spent so many years in that house, holding on to things that don't matter anymore. It's time to let go and move forward road. The shop continued to grow. I hired an assistant, a young woman named Raya who had just graduated from design school and needed a place to start. She brought fresh ideas, new patterns, an energy that matched the building's own. Together, we root offering custom alterations, then bespoke pieces, small runs of clothing that sold as fast as we could make them. The building was alive again. Not just with commerce, but with purpose. It had become a gathering place, a workshop, a home. The upstairs room was my retreat, the main floor my canvas. And the back room, with its new cherry shelves, had become a studio where Raya and I worked side by side, measuring and cutting and sewing. My brother and his family came one Sunday. My nephew ran through the shop, touching the fabric, asking about the photographs on the wall. My brother's wife browsed the shelves and bought a length of blue cotton, the same shade I'd given their son Monsieur Wire. Keeping it in the family, she said with a smile. We had lunch at the small table by the front window, the same spot where my father sat on his Thursday visits. The family filled the space, laughing and talking, the ERS of distance slowly closing. My father raised his glass of tea. I want to say something. To Linda. To all of you. We turned to him, the room quiet. I've made mistakes, he said. I've hurt people I love. I've been stubborn and angry and wrong more times than I can count. But I'm still here. And I'm grateful. Grateful for this family, for this shop, for the chance to be part of something good. He looked at me, his eyes steady. Thank you, Linda, for letting me in. For giving me a chance to try again. I felt the heat behind my eyes, the words stuck in my throat. You're welcome, Dad. Always. The afternoon passed in a blur of conversation and laughter, the shop filled with the people I'd thought I'd lost and found again. My mother held my hand, my brother told stories from our childhood, my nephew ran around the fabric shelves, a blur of blue cotton and joy. As the sun set and the light faded, they began to leave, one by one. My father and mother last, walking slowly toward the door, my father's cane tapping on the wood floor. Lock up, he said, and get some rest. You've earned it. I stood at the door and watched them walk down the street, their figures small in the evening light. Then I turned back to the shop, to the fabric in the photographs and the spider plant on the windowsill. I climbed the stairs to the upstairs room and stood at the window. The town was quiet, the street lamps flickering on, the sky deepening into night. The building was still, but it hummed with the quiet energy of things that had been built and mended and made whole. I sat on the bed and looked out at the stars, the same stars my grandfather had seen from this window, the same stars that had watched over this building for more than 60 years. I didn't know what the future would bring. But I knew, with a certainty that settled in my bones, that I was where I was supposed to be. The shop was closed for the night, but the light was still on in the upstairs window. A small light, steady in warm, a signal to anyone who passed by that this building was alive. That this family was alive. That the work of building and mending and making whole was still going on, day by day, stitch by stitch. I lay down on the bed, the window open to the night air, the curtains stirring in the breeze. The building creaked around me, old and new, full of memory and promised this was my home. This was my life. And for the first time in my 31 years, I was ready to live it.